co-director, and then I have Ray Valenzuela, and I have Janine Petty here as well. Janine is the voter registration director, so if we have any questions she can answer, we'll certainly be doing that. So the chairman and recorder, they have some opening remarks to provide today. They will be followed by Scott Jarrett to make you aware of upcoming deadlines that are important for voters to know and for you to know. And Recorder Richard is going to talk about early voting and perhaps clear up some misconceptions that are out there about early voting. Then we're going to get to some questions and answers. So because we're in this space, and we're also streaming this to YouTube today for anybody that isn't able to join us. We have Jesse here who has a microphone, so people on the stream can hear your question. Whenever I call on you, please stand up, tell us who you are, what organization you're with, and then go ahead and ask your question, and we'll find the right person to answer that question. And so please let's also, I expect us to maintain some decorum here in this room, and hopefully, and but Yvonne's here, so maybe not, I don't know, we'll see. If you have data questions, something that's way more detailed that we have to get back to you on, Megan's here, Matt's here, I'm here. We'll do our best to get back to you as soon as we can by phone call or email as well to accommodate you. So with that, I'd like Chairman Bill Gates to please come up and say a few words.
No, it won't be that long. Fields, thanks so much. I appreciate it. Good to see everyone. My name is Bill Gates, and I represent District 3 on the Board of Supervisors, and I'm the chairman of the Board of Supervisors. On behalf of the entire board, I want to thank everyone for being here today. We're really pleased to be starting these press conferences today, which will be running through and beyond Election Day. As the chairman of the board, my top priority has been to run great elections. And we know that we are just one part of the equation on the Board of Supervisors. This is truly a partnership. So we're partnered with the recorder, Stephen Richer, our co-elections directors, all the elections workers, our volunteers, and importantly, the political parties. And I want to make very sure that people understand the reason that we've stood up this command structure is in the interest of further transparency. We want to get out ahead of the misinformation and the disinformation that might be spread out there. Instead, be here to answer your questions. Unfortunately, in 2020, we had a lot of people that listened to this misinformation, and they were actually outside of our elections center. Many of these people are good people. They're there for the right reasons, but unfortunately they had been misled. So we want to get ahead of that misinformation, provide you with all the facts, and again, I want to thank each and every one of you for being here today.
All right, thank you, Chairman Gates. And next we have Recorder Stephen Richer.
All right. Let's go up any higher. All right, just that. I think I'm just going to say the same thing, probably for the third time, which is thank you. So thank you very much for being here. I'm Maricopa County Recorder Stephen Richer, and yeah, thanks for being here. Thanks for covering the 2020 election for the last 4 years. Appreciate that. Part of the reason why I'm confident about this election is because of all the work that you all have done and that we have done into telling the story of election workers, telling the story of election administration. I'm confident that Arizonans have far more information as to the nuts and bolts of elections than they did prior to the 2020 general election. Sorry about that. I'm clearly messing you up. All right, in large part because of the work that y'all have done. For the past year and a half, I've tried to be the most transparent elected official possible. I think for that reason, I think almost everyone here has my personal cell phone. I put out quarterly reports. I post as many statistics as I can find. I describe processes on social media. I respond to people who message me on Twitter. I give tours, right, Cameron? I answer emails. I write very lengthy reports about election processes even when they're not solicited and sometimes when they're not even wanted. And I even let Hank Stevenson work a voting location. So these regular press briefings are a furtherance of that goal. I've watched them work for the governor. I've watched them work for the attorney general. I've watched them work for the county attorney and for others in Arizona. You and anyone else, whether everyday voters or members of the media, can continue to email us, text us, call us, message us as you did before. That's fine, but the team will continue to provide more information and more access to elections administration in Maricopa County than ever before. But Bill and I wanted to carve out time every so often to make sure we're in touch with you and to answer any questions that will be productive in helping voters ahead and during the election season. We also hope that in doing so, we might be able to more efficiently use staff time like Ray, Scott, and Janine's, because actually running this election is priority number one. So again, we appreciate you being here, and we appreciate all the work that you do to inform Arizona voters. Thanks.
All right. Thank you, Recorder Richard, for those words. And Scott Jarrett has some really pertinent information. We have a lot of deadlines coming up, including the voter registration deadline that's just around the corner. So we definitely want you guys and voters to be aware of these deadlines that are coming up very shortly, and they're part of state law, and this is what these guys are all about, complying with state law. So, Scott?
Great. Thank you, Fields. So yeah, I'll be reviewing a few key dates and some key information that voters should be aware of so they can be successfully participating in the upcoming midterm elections. Also be providing some information that our community members may be interested in volunteering and coming to work at our upcoming midterm elections. So one of those key dates is the voter registration deadline, which is quickly approaching. So it's 1 week away. That is October 11th. And this does cause some questions for voters because this voter registration deadline can vary from state to state. So one of the things that, especially when you couple that with Maricopa County, we're one of the fastest growing counties, have been for the last few years. So voters will have those questions about when do they register to vote. So that is October 11th. And the easiest way for voters to register is to go to servicearizona.com. That's where a voter, if you're making an update to your license, where you update your address on your license. So the very next key date for voters to be aware of is actually the following day, October 12th. We'll be mailing out 1.9 million early ballots to those voters that are signed up on the active early voting list, or those voters that made a one-time request for their early ballot. One thing that's important to note is all of these voters have requested to receive their early ballot by mail. Now, it's not too late for you to request that early ballot. That deadline is October 28th for you to make that final request for an early ballot. We will also be allowing voters to participate on the very first day of early voting, even if you haven't requested that, because we'll be opening up our vote centers on October 12th as well. So similar to the 2020 election cycle and our more recent August primary election, we'll be offering a vote center model. What that means is voters can choose from any one of our voting locations, not assigned an individual precinct, and we'll be using a phased opening. So our first phase will be opening 12 vote centers on October 12th. Our second phase will be about 2 weeks later, where we'll have about 56 voting locations open on October 28th. The third phase will be the day before Election Day, November 7th, that Monday, where we'll have 128 voting locations open or vote centers open. And then the last phase will be on Election Day itself, November 8th, where we'll have 223 voting locations open. So all of these locations are posted on our website currently, locations.maricopa.vote. You can download a complete list with the entire schedule via an Excel document, or you can use our searchable dashboard. You can enter your address in, whether that's your home address, your work address, find a location that's convenient for you, and you can search by city or town or even the shortest wait time. So a lot of great information, and again, that's locations.maricopa.vote. Another critical piece of information for voters to be aware of is this will be one of the longest ballots in Maricopa County's history. So, and the reason that is the number of contests. So on average, voters will have 80 contests or more to vote. The residents of Mesa that actually overlap some of the Tempe school districts, they'll have the longest ballot. So in the Sheffield precinct, 87 contests will be on their ballot. So one of the things that we're doing to inform voters and help them prepare is we send out a sample ballot So on October 21st, we'll send out a sample ballot to all of those non-early ballot requesters or those households. But voters don't need to wait. They can go to beballotready.vote. That's a personalized dashboard. If you've been driving in your car, you've watched any TV lately, or even if you've gone to a movie, you're probably seeing our ads directing voters to beballotready.vote. They can log into that, find out and check their voter registration status. They can find their closest voting location. They can sign up to track their ballot, whether that's through email or whether that is through text messages, or they can actually download a sample ballot. And then they can use that sample ballot to prepare whether they're voting from their kitchen table or they're going to vote in any one of our in-person vote centers. So turning to our recruitment efforts, one more slide. All right. So elections are a community effort. We cannot do this with the entire team of members from our community coming to work, whether that is people coming to work in our warehouse, or drivers, or coming to work as early ballot processing board members, where they're separating that affidavit envelope from the ballot from the affidavit envelope, creating that secret ballot. So for this election, we'll be aiming to hire 3,000 temporary workers. Currently, we've hired just over 1,800, 1,851. We're 61% staff for this upcoming election. Most of the areas that we still have vacancies are in those voting locations that open on election day or in the warehouse that work election night. Those are some of our easier positions to recruit for, and they're also the longest time away. Now, turning to our closer are the positions that are starting sooner in the process. Our 27-day vote centers were over 99% staffed. Our 12-day vote centers that open on October 28th, we are 80% staffed. And here, then, or down the street at the election center, we are 70% staffed for all of our workers that will work from McTech, the Maricopa County Tabulation and Election Center. So, turning to security, one of the areas that we've received questions on is what are our plans to keep our voting locations secure? Also, how are we implementing security to keep integrity through the voting process? And when you think about security, there's many, many different layers of security, and there's not one solution. Those can be very technical. Those can be security measures related to prevention or deterrence or even detection. So one of those events, our security solutions, is coming up next week, and it's the logic and accuracy test. And there's lots of questions about exactly what is a logic and accuracy test. Ours is going to be scheduled on October 11th at 2 p.m., and this is really a series of tests. One performed by the county, an independent test that's performed by the Secretary of State, and it's all done under the oversight of the political parties. So after 2020, there's lots of questions about could vote switching occur? And this is one of those tests that goes through and verifies that we've actually accurately programmed the election, that vote switching can't occur. So this test occurs not only before the election, we'll have another test that occurs after the election, and that will be open to members of the public. Another area of security is partnering with our law enforcement professionals, whether that's at the federal, state, or local level. So when we have in-person voting occurring, we will have the Maricopa County Sheriff's Office within our election center, our election command center. We also invite the Arizona Counterterrorism and Information Center into that command center. The Sheriff's Office will have personnel that will be deployed throughout the county that can respond to any issues that we may encounter through the election process, but they only respond once asked and once we call them and ask them to respond. We'll also have additional security within the election center as soon as we mail out ballots, and then we'll also have roaming patrols around the Maricopa County Election Center. But elections are not just security, technical controls, they're also a human element of this. And when you're talking about integrity, and some of that is the responsibility of all of us, and it's to seek out accurate information and reliable information from trusted sources. And what are those trusted sources? That's at the federal level, that's the U.S. Elections Assistance Commission. The state level, that's the Secretary of State's office, or the Clean Elections. At the county level, that's Maricopa County, and the Maricopa County's website, the Recorder's Office website, or the Elections Department's website. So we have lots of information that voters can seek out about how we administer elections. One of those documents you can find on maricopa.vote are our election plans. Those are approved by the Board of Supervisors back in May. Pages and pages of details of how we are going to administer this election. We've also been combating disinformation. So hundreds of myths or inaccuracies about the elections process. We've created a justthefacts.vote website where you can find information that debunks those inaccuracies. We also have a newsletter that you can sign up for, a Just the Facts newsletter that talks about the nuts and bolts of the elections process. But really, it's if you have questions, if you're skeptical of the process, we actually encourage you to get involved. Come figure out and learn how we do elections, right? And there's no better way for you to learn than to actually come work an election cycle. Some of the things that you will find out, you'll find out that you're working alongside members of your community. You're going to find that we have political party representation from the complete spectrum, whether that's Republicans, Democrats, Independents, Party Not Declared, Libertarians, all working alongside you. You're going to find that we have checks and balances throughout the entire process, whether those checks and balances are very detailed chain of custody records, whether they are tamper-evident seals, whether they are serialized port blockers that we put into USB ports so people can't enter a nefarious device into those items, whether that is a highly secure room that requires 2 people to be in it all the time, or that live video streaming that you're working under cameras throughout the entire election cycle. Lots of different checks and balances. What I hope is that once you come work for us, you'll be able to take away and have confidence in our election cycle because of all that, how we fortified our election processes with all those checks and balances. And lastly, I'd hope that you have a very, very rewarding experience coming working alongside members of the community to serve Maricopa County voters. So with that, turn it over to Fields.
So there was a lot in there, so I'm sure you have questions about that. We'll get back to the questions in just a second. I know Recorder Richard has a few things he wants to talk about, the early voting list, the ballots that are going to go out starting next week, that sort of thing. So, Recorder Richard?
Fantastic. All right. So I think we're going to talk about a lot of things over the next few weeks with all of you, but today we're going to talk about early voting. Yay, hopefully everyone recognizes these. Most of you have become very familiar with Arizona's early voting rules. We've been doing it successfully since 1992. It hasn't changed that much over the last 30 years. It works. But there are 4 things I want to note for all of y'all, and then there are 4 things that I would ask you guys to maybe share with the public or for any members of the public who are watching, just as reminders. So first, regarding the active early voting list. So this is what we used to call the permanent early voting list, but then legislation was passed that made it the active early voting list. As to the difference of that hasn't come into play yet, so we're not going to touch on that one. Ballots are mailed out, as Scott mentioned, on October 12th. If you removed yourself from ABLE after September 23rd, however, you will still receive a ballot by mail. And that's because that's when we send the list to the printer of the 1.9 million registered ABLE voters so that they can get ready for that October 12th mailing. That's allowed by ARS section 16544 subsection F. So something that we do. So if you remove yourself from ABLE on October 11th, you're still going to be getting a ballot by mail. Second, if you received a mail ballot but still want to vote in person, that's totally fine. You don't need to do anything special. As soon as you check into a voting location, any previous ballot packets issued to you will become inactivated. They'll become dead. And that's because we don't accept loose ballots. So you can't just take your ballot and put it in a mail USPS box. You can't just take your ballot and show up to MCTEC and say, "Hi, Megan, come grab my ballot," or something like that. It has to come back in this green envelope. And the first thing that we do upon receiving this green envelope is we scan this barcode. This barcode is a unique barcode that links directly to your voter registration profile. If you have checked in person, then already a vote will have been logged to your voter profile. If you send this back and then we scan it in and you haven't voted before, then a vote will be logged to your profile such that if you show up on election day or on any day for early voting and you try to check in, it'll ask you to cast a provisional ballot. So this is how we prevent against double voting. This is how we track your ballot. 3. If you have moved away for the summer, lucky you, but you must email or call us if you want your ballot sent to a different location. USPS does not automatically forward election mail. So even if you've said, send my Town and Country or ESPN magazine or Sports Illustrated, they still have Sports Illustrated magazines? I don't know. But so while all of that might get forwarded to your lovely rustic estate in North Dakota or wherever it is, your ballot by mail will not go automatically there. So you have to contact our office. You can go to request.maricopa.vote, or you can call us, or you can email us. So please, please, please do not assume that will all be automatically forwarded. 4th, if you request a second ballot packet, so you got your first one, then you tore the ballot, or you spilled coffee on it, or you did any of the many of hundreds of weird things that Ray has seen over the last years while working in elections, then you're welcome to request another mail ballot. That's okay, as long as you do it before that 10-day deadline that Scott mentioned. But when we send out a new packet, this yellow packet, please use the green return envelope in this packet, because again, that first packet, that first return envelope is deactivated, so we ask that you use the second packet in the second envelope. A few things for the general public. You can and you should track your ballot. So you can go to beballotready.vote, or you can text JOIN to 628-683. You can see when we mail your ballot out. You can see when we've received it. You can see when we've signature verified it. And you can see when we've sent it ahead to tabulation. A few 100,000 people successfully tracked their ballot during the August primary. So that's great, but we'd love to get it a few million people who are tracking their ballots in Arizona, but especially in Maricopa County. Second, if you receive a ballot packet for somebody who is no longer at your address, please don't just say, don't just leave it on your kitchen counter, don't just throw it away. But if you'll notice that on these yellow ballot packets that come to you in the mail, there's a box right here, and you can check that box, and then you can put it back in any mail deposit box, any USPS box, and then it'll send back to us, and we can begin the process for moving the person to inactive status. The MDRA process is what I was going for. We cannot remove you automatically. We cannot remove you just because somebody told us that your kid moved to Colorado. We can't automatically remove you because all of a sudden you registered a new Netflix account in California or something like that. So please help us do this. We're very proud of the list maintenance that we have done over the last year and a half. We hope that our lists are more accurate than ever before, but this is a way to continue that process, and we appreciate your partnership with it. Third, this is a general election. Republicans, Democrats, Libertarians, and Independents will not have different ballots because of their party affiliation. But there are still over 12,000 different ballot styles for the general election. Think of all the overlapping school districts, water districts, legislative districts, congressional districts, and so on and so forth. So you might not be voting on the same exact stuff as somebody who lives 5 minutes down the road from you. That is not a problem. Fourth, ballot ordering. Republicans will appear above Democrats in partisan races. This is because, as dictated in state law, in 2018, Governor Doug Ducey, a Republican, got more votes in Maricopa County than did his Democratic opponent, and that is the rules by which we use for partisan races ordering in the November general election. Therefore, according to state law, partisan races, Republican candidates will be listed first. All right, and that's it. So now back to Fields.
All right. Well, Thank you, Recorder Richard. A lot of information there, a lot of good information, especially for early voting, which we know 80 or 90% of our folks use here in Maricopa County. So before we go to questions, I just wanted to mention if you're with a Spanish language television station or you need the answer in Spanish, Selena is here. There she is. And she can translate for you on the spot, or if you would like something in Spanish for your television station afterwards, we can certainly make her available, talk a little bit about what the folks have talked about up here. So let me know if you prefer the answer in Spanish when you ask the question, okay? So with that, does anybody have any questions? All right, we'll start with Mark. I saw your hand first.
I guess this is for Commissioner Gates. Earlier you said you're working with the Democratic and Republican parties to hopefully have a smooth election. I'm curious as to the relationship of the Republican Party and how they have worked with the county, with the elections department to try to make sure this is not a repeat of 2020.
All right, a question for Chairman of the Board of Supervisors, Bill Gates.
Yeah, well, thank you for that question. Yeah, I did mention that this is really a partnership running these elections with the political parties. And so far in 2022, it's been no different. Again, this is Maricopa County. So we're dealing with the Maricopa County Republican Party, Maricopa County Democrat Party, Maricopa County Libertarian Party. And again, the relationships have been very good partnerships. We are grateful for the county chairs of all those organizations. And so if you're hearing something to the contrary as it relates to the work that we're doing with the county parties, that's not accurate. That's certainly not my perspective on this. So just to be clear, the state, we're not dealing with the state party. It's primarily the county party, and Chairwoman Nyland has been great, as well as the chairs of the other two parties.
Thank you, Chairman Gates. Next question. Sasha?
I'm wondering, thank you.
For the benefit of the YouTube crowd.
Thank you. We've seen a lot of misinformation around pens in the past. What pens are you guys using for the general?
We're using fast-drying felt-tip pens.
Specifically, are you using the Pentel again?
We're using a paper-made pen.
Okay. Is that the same one used in the last election?
I don't believe
In
so.
the primary?
That is not the same one.
It is not. Okay.
We found the paper-mates worked a little bit better, and so we're going to switch to those. If you're filling your ballot out at your dining room table like I will, it doesn't matter what pen you use, but a fast-drying felt-tip pen, okay? Next question. Yvonne?
It appeared during the primary that the board, the county attorney's office was very aggressive in dealing with misinformation, specifically about those pens, with the cease and desist letter. Is that the same sort of approach that you intend on taking during the general election?
So as it relates to the operations of elections and if people are spreading information that could interfere with those operations. Does anybody want to take that? Mr. Chairman?
Yeah. So it was, again, because of the experience that we've been through over the past few cycles, it's very important to us that we do get the truth out there. And especially when we're talking about and this is the administration on election day, which is within the Board of Supervisors' responsibility. If people are giving bad information, and there was someone out on Twitter who was actually a candidate who was suggesting that people steal the pens and replace them with different pens, obviously the county attorney dealt with that very swiftly, and we will continue to do that in the future. Again, we've got to make sure that people understand the truth, the facts. That's our role here. And if people have questions and if the media has questions, we're happy to answer those. So I think you'll continue to see this. I think the county sort of found its voice with the whole Cyber Ninja debacle, and we hope that we've been a good source of information to the people of Maricopa County, and we're going to continue doing that.
Yvonne, does that answer your question? Yeah. All right, very good. And please let us know who you are and what organization you're with whenever you ask a question.
Marnie McKim, ABC 15. clarification on the early ballot. So you marked it, you put it back in its green envelope. Can you drop it off at the polling center? And number two, what is the time, day of voting? Does it mean postmarked by that day, or 7 p.m. it has to be in the hands on the day of the polls?
I think Recorder Richard is going to take these questions. Did you hear both questions?
Fantastic. No, but I missed your name. Oh, Marty. All right. Fantastic. Thank you. So we are a receipt state, which means we have to have it by 7 p.m. We not postmarked. There are some states where you just have to have mailed it on election day, but we have to have it in our possession by 7 p.m., which is why we recommend, if you're going to send it back through the United States Post Office, that you give it at least 7 days advance start, 7 days prior to the election. That will guarantee that it will get into our possession. But of course, to circle back on the tracking, 628-683 join, so we certainly recommend that so that you can have the confidence in the process. Now, if you receive an early ballot, you can fill it out, you can put it in that green envelope, you can sign that green envelope, you can seal that green envelope, and then you can either drop it off through the USPS, you can take it to any one of our voting locations. There will be 223 eventually, as Scott mentioned, or you can drop it off at one of our 2 drop boxes, either at MCTEC or at Mesa Juvenile Courts, which are picked up directly by bipartisan election teams. And places where you drop off your ballot work effectively the same as the United States Post Office, except for they're picked up directly by a bipartisan team, and you can drop that off at 6:59 p.m. on election night at a voting location or at a drop box, unlike the USPS. Do not drop it off at 6:59 on election night. Good? Good. And then to the other question, yeah, Nancy and Brandon and Mickey have all been awesome partners. Those are the 3 political parties. I think that we've had more communication with the political parties than ever before. I think that the political parties have been more active. Obviously, I only have 2 years of history on this, but from what I understand and what I hear, they've been more active in providing workers, more active on providing feedback. I can tell you we have observers everywhere. 27 days out, at every single voting location, in the signature verification rooms, in the ballot processing rooms, always in the tabulation rooms, and they play a part in the tabulation process, so we have to have those observers there, and we're lucky that we have 3 very attentive, assiduous political party chair people.
Let's start right here, Jesse, right next. Yeah, let's start in the back, and well, either way.
Sorry.
Please let us know who you are.
Okay, my name's Kira Riley. I'm with the Arizona Capital Times.
Okay.
I was just curious, there's this emphasis on information, combating misinformation, being very transparent with the public. What does that look like internally in terms of like bulking up communications personnel and like running these campaigns? Yeah, just from the other side, like what does that look like?
Sure. Well, I guess I'll take that one as the communications director, and if the chairman would like to add anything to it after that. Each organization, the recorder's office, the elections department, and then of course my office here on the 10th floor, we have strong communications teams. We do a lot of communication with the public, media relations, including internal communications with 13,000 employees at Maricopa County. So for this, though, this is an incident much like the pandemic was an incident. So we decided to stand up what is essentially a joint information center using the same model we used during the COVID-19 pandemic. It was very effective. We were able to communicate better. So it's really not about adding people. It's about shifting people that were already working here at the county and then also making them more cohesive by using the same tracking so we know, okay, Kira asked a question about XYZ. Is that a board question? Is that a recorder question? Is it an elections department operations question? And we can field those questions more quickly. We can know what people are asking, and we can make sure we're getting you the right information more quickly. And how does that translate? If you're asking a lot of questions, how does that translate to what we're communicating in a press conference or communicating to the general public? Because you guys don't see this, but the recorder's office was telling me, so we use the STAR call center. We have a call center. The primary election alone, they had well over 3,000 calls, maybe more than that, Eileen. She was sharing with me. So they're answering every email, every phone call. All the data is coming, so we want to make sure we're on the same page. Does that answer your question? Okay, very good. Anything to add?
For the primary, real quick, we had 17,000 emails from voters, and we responded in under 30 minutes if they were sent during the business day. On the election day, those calls do go to our elections call center, the STAR call center, and the average wait time was under 8 minutes. We're actually in the process of onboarding our temporary call center workers for the STAR election center, and we'll continue to hopefully do a really good job with the emails. And if there's misinformation out there, if you want to send it our way, we would appreciate that. We try to hunt down as much of this as we can, and we try to respond to it because we think it's very important that accurate information be out there and that we correct the record, which we have done many a time, but we can't let it be debilitating, and our first and foremost objective is to run the operation and make sure that everyone can vote.
Stephanie Bennett with Fox 10. I have a couple questions. What's the latest statistic of early ballots? You said it's 80 to 90% of the voting population, or
Was it 77% in the primary?
77% are on the active early voting list.
Yeah, 77% of voters on the active early voting list. Sorry, I was estimating there.
no problem? Sounds good. And then just my second question: when will the logic and accuracy tests be held on the machines?
Scott?
So that will be on October 11th at 2 p.m. in the afternoon.
And do you want to speak to maybe why the 77% versus the 85%?
It depends on election.
So Recorder mentioned that we have 77% of our voters signed up on the active early voting list. So those are those voters that will receive a ballot automatically through the mail. But we could have 85% vote early. So those would be people that make a one-time request post us mailing out those active early ballots, or those ballots to the active early voters, or those voters that vote in person early. So that would then get us up to that 85% that we had in the August primary. In the November 2020 general election, it was 91%.
Mary Jo Pitzel with the Arizona Republic. I had a question. Scott, you mentioned that the voting machines have been programmed to prevent any vote switching. Can you detail that a bit? And given the skepticism that continues about the machines, does your answer suggest that they can be programmed to switch votes?
So during the logic and accuracy test, we're testing to make sure that we've programmed the equipment accurately. So that includes all those 12,000 ballots that the recorder mentioned. So, and what we will do through that logic and accuracy test is we're going to test thousands of ballots. For this election, I believe it's over 13,000 different ballots every single rotation, right? So the recorder mentioned within those contests that they'll rotate. So every single rotation to make sure that those ballots will be accurately tabulated on our equipment.
But you said that it was programmed to prevent vote switching. Does that suggest that it could be programmed in another way?
So our goal is to program our equipment to tabulate that ballot exactly as we intend to, which is accurately, and that's what the purpose of that test is, and that's the purpose of the independent test from the Secretary of State's office as well. And again, that's all done under the oversight of the political parties, so the county chairs will be present when we're performing that, and they'll also have additional observers in the room.
Okay, so programming it. So here we have a test ballot. It says Barry Goldwater, whom I voted for, obviously, Rose Mofford, Carl Hayden, and Lori Piesua. And so when it's programmed, it doesn't read Barry Goldwater. It reads along the alignment of this mark such that it knows that that is a vote that would be assigned for Barry Goldwater. And so that's what we mean by when we say the programming. But these are tested with the logic and accuracy test both before and then after, just to make sure that nothing happened during the election process. And then remember that this is in addition to the hand count audit of a statistically significant number of ballots that are randomly selected, not by us, but by the political parties, and then hand count counted, not by us, but by political party designees to make sure that matches. These are the same tabulation machines that we used for the August primary. It matched, everything worked out, everything was perfect, everyone was happy. We'll do that again.
Give me a second, Jen. So I think the bottom line is, Mary Jo, to answer your question, we're talking about testing the equipment to make sure the programming is sound and that it's reading the correct dot in the correct way, right? And you had asked, could it be programmed some other way? Not by us. That's not how it works. It is programmed to read the dots in a certain way, then that's what the logic and accuracy test confirms. Does that make sense? Okay. And Jen, we know who you are, but please say your name.
Hi, Jen Fifield with VoteBeat. I have like a three-part question. Do you have the confirmed list for poll watchers in each location yet with the political parties? Do you have more interest this election than prior elections? And then have you changed the rules for them at all once they get inside the polling place?
Scott?
So the political parties will submit a list of the observers that will come observe within our ballot tabulation center. So that's the only requirement that we provide them to provide a pre-list for. And that list has not been provided by any of the political parties at this point in time. So we do establish guidelines for them when they're observing at our voting locations. And those are consistent with what we had in 2020 as well as in our August primary and what we'll be using for this general election. All of those guidelines really follow what the Elections Procedures Manual sets out within the Secretary of State's office.
So you haven't changed how they, log in and log out? You haven't changed anything about where they stand or, anything about the security at place to watch them or to monitor them?
So in the August primary, we did ask that they sign-in log. Prior to that, they were signing in, and our poll workers were calling that back into our hotline. So, and then during the COVID-19, we asked that they keep a minimum distance of 6 feet for physical distancing. Now, they just need to make sure that they're not interfering with the voting process, right, or intimidating a voter as they're participating. So they're not allowed within any place that a voter would be completing their ballot, so near the voting booths, or standing right over a voter as they're checking in during the voting process.
Hi, Cameron Arcan with Red State. This is a question for Recorder Richer. In regards to, you guys mentioned you're doing the logic and accuracy test, and that's going to be open to the public. What methods are you guys using to outreach to communities so that way they're aware that this is going to be open to the public, particularly people who were skeptical of the previous elections results? And what other ways are you guys trying to include those people in the process to inform them and make outreach to those members of the general public?
I think this is sort of an everyone question.
We'll let you start.
I mean, we're counting on a really, really good article from Red State. So if you could help us out there. No, we're doing lots of stuff like this, but we communicate through all the means that Scott and Bill had mentioned previously, whether it's through our newsletter, whether it's through our social media accounts. I know I still send emails out to my personal distribution list. I put stuff to my personal social media. We have a robust community engagement team that has gone out to different locations, whether it's political LDs or whether it's Mesa Community College or events such as that. We have a deputy registrar program that now boasts about 1,000 certified deputy registrars who are people who have committed to learning about the voter registration process and then are engaged on in continuing education about elections, and we've been doing classes like that, and we make mention of the tabulation process during those meetings, but also the logic and accuracy test. And then I actually just this morning gave a tour to some Republican precinct committee people in it's the new Tempe, the old LD 18. And so we're doing lots of stuff to that effect. And if you have questions, ask us. We want this process to be as open as humanly possible.
And I would echo everything that Stephen has said. In addition, as I mentioned at the beginning of this, I made it my commitment at the beginning of my term as chair that this will be the most transparent election in the history of Maricopa County, and that's what it is, and it will be. Again, the fact that we're doing this here, we've never done press conferences like this weeks in advance of Election Day. And then finally, remember, in addition to all those other things that the recorder mentioned, we have a live stream 24/7. So people are stuck at home, they can still watch the logic and accuracy test on the live stream.
parties sign off on the logic and accuracy test too.
So, Jen, did you have your hand up as well? So, Sasha, let's go Sasha, Yvonne, and then back to Jen, okay?
Hi, Sasha Hupka with the Arizona Republic again. I'm wondering, we've talked a lot about security, and we've talked a lot about, law enforcement involvement in that. I'm wondering what happens with threats that don't rise to the level of being reported to law enforcement. Are people just given like a stern warning? How do you guys handle those threats?
Well, threats in what way? A phone call, an email, how is it delivered?
I mean, I think potentially all of the above. Is there a difference, I guess?
I think it depends on where that email lands, let's say, or that phone call lands. Scott, did you want to talk a little bit more about security and the involvement of law enforcement?
So one of the aspects of security is even handling it within, so you mentioned threats that don't rise to the need for us to involve law enforcement. So we actually, in 2021, introduced premium poll worker training. Through that premium poll worker training, that was a lot of de-escalation training, situational based training, so we can prepare our poll workers to be able to walk through conflict that might happen in our voting location. Also to be able to provide that optimal customer service. So if it is just a concern, right? In Arizona, we're one of the few states that voters actually have to show an ID. So I mentioned we're a very fast growing state. So we have a lot of voters that will be for the first time voting in Arizona. So having our poll workers be able to go through and walk through the why. Why are we asking for an ID? And then being able to alleviate those voters' concerns. So that's where a lot of those types of issues will occur. But anything else that is what we view as a true threat, we do forward to our law enforcement partners, whether that's through the ACTIC or the FBI or the Department of Homeland Security.
And can you just talk a little bit, or one of you just talk a little bit about what actually constitutes a true threat? Because I know there is a specific legal definition for that, right?
Barred the longest.
Chairman Gates?
Yeah, I guess, again, I think we're not going to, get involved in hair splitting on this. We're not law enforcement. We are on the front lines, and we're very sensitive to that fact. We appreciate that. Our folks in the elections department, we want to keep them safe. They have, as Scott mentioned, work on de-escalation techniques. But if we get to a point where law enforcement needs to get involved, we turn it over to them. They make those decisions. Obviously, they work with the county attorney if necessary. So that's a great thing. We've got a big team here at Maricopa County. We all know our silos, and our job at the board perspective is to make sure that everyone feels that it's a safe experience, that they're encouraged, and we're very sensitive to that too. We want to make sure that there is protection available, but at the same time, we're not going to militarize this process. That's very important. We want to make sure that all people in our community feel comfortable, and if they want to vote on Election Day, they're going to vote on Election Day. And we fought hard to defend that on the Board of Supervisors. Not everyone feels that way. Some people want to go to all mail-in voting. We felt very strongly that it's important for those 15-20% of folks who want to vote on Election Day. We're going to fight for their right to do that. But for people who love to vote at home, we want to do that too. And we would argue that here at Maricopa County, we have one of the strongest hybrid voting programs in the country.
Quick question for Fields. Did you deny anyone a press pass, and if so, why and who?
I don't have those forms in front of us, but yes, we have denied 3 people press passes. And I can share that with you a little bit later if you want to submit a public records request. Do you have any other questions? Yvonne?
You have talked you've touched a bit about the relationship between the county and the county Republicans. How is the relationship with the Republican National Committee, which has complained about the process and so-called discrepancies used in using GOP poll workers compared to Democrats? Where does that issue stand ahead of November?
We're talking about the letter that came from the counsel for the Republican National Committee.
So the question is about a couple of letters that we have received from the Republican National Committee lawyers. First one was from Eric Spencer, and then the most recent from Corey Langhofer, who's apparently now representing the Republican National Committee. And the allegation is that we have not done a good enough job as a county as employing Republicans as elections workers. We feel that we've done an excellent job of this. There is not a requirement that there's exact parity, but we, as we've explained many times during this press conference today, it takes all the political parties to run a successful election, and we've definitely had that focus. And I would say compared to previous elections, we've had probably better cooperation, as has been mentioned earlier, from the Republican Party even than in the past. But I'll allow my colleagues here if they want to get into more specifics about that. But again, the status to respond is we have just received another letter, like I said, from Corey Langhofer, and we're in the process of reviewing that and providing additional information. But we have addressed in detail the allegations made in Eric Spencer's letter. I hope we don't have litigation. I think it will be unsuccessful if the RNC decides to pursue this. But again, they have that right to do that, and we have very strong evidence that supports what we've done and has been mentioned during this press conference. Again, we've redoubled our efforts, and I think I saw Recorder Richard maybe even sent a tweet out this morning asking, we need all volunteers, elections workers to join us, Republicans, Democrats, Libertarians, and that continues to be the message from Maricopa County.
More to add, Recorder Richard?
Yeah, the 4 Republicans on the County Board of Supervisors. I'm a Republican. We welcome Republican involvement in the process. I think we've had more Republicans participate as temporary workers than ever before in county elections history. We want to keep getting the right people to fit the right spots. That's the most important thing, as long as it's within the parameters of the law. Everyone gets the same rubric. Everyone has to abide by the same job qualifications. We equally apply those. Nobody could say anything to the contrary. We're excited about the team that we put together. A lot of these people worked the August primary, and then we're growing that team, and so I think it's going to be great, and it's been a fair process. And regarding the county party, we have constant communication. We should probably have like an IM open or something like that, just because it is just every day information flows back and forth with the county political parties, and so they know everything that's going on.
Okay, so we'll make this the last question because we're almost at the end of the hour here.
Taylor Tassler, KTAR News. Today, the DOJ held a briefing about the Election Threats Task Force briefing with election officials, including Arizona. Were any of you in that meeting? And if so, what was discussed? Were you aware of this?
This morning?
Sorry, I can't help you there, Taylor. But if we find out more, we'll certainly let you know. So thank you very much. Again, if anybody is from a Spanish language television station, you need to have an interview in Spanish or anything like that, Selena's here to help us with that, and we're happy to accommodate you. But thank you very much for being here for this press conference today. We want to keep you updated on a regular basis, so look for the next advisory for a press conference, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.
And if you have really challenging early voting questions, I'm able to answer the easier ones, but Ray's here for your really challenging ones later.